Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Unrested. I got tips, tricks, all kinds of ways you can move to Japan, live in Japan. If you want to learn more about the media in Japan, movie stars in Japan, politics in Japan, and the newest daily stuff going on within Japan, here's your channel for it. If you like what you see here today, please think about liking or subscribing. It helps a bunch. Let's jump into today's topic, and this is kind of a classic. And I call it using Japan for the wrong reasons, especially when it comes to social media. As you probably already realize, there is a bunch of social media out of Japan now. It's not like back when I started in 2007 and there was like a handful of J-vlogger channels. Now it is in every facet from YouTube to TikTok to YouTube Shorts, Instagram, Facebook, live streams, everything going on within Japan when people go to visit there, especially now when tourism is at one of its highest levels ever. But we're going to go into people who go there and use it completely in the wrong way. Or I guess you could even say go there and just do little to no research, don't discover anything new, or use the entire population or the country as a form of entertainment rather than the culture that it is. So getting into the first ones, we're going to get this out of the way real quick because I hate even bringing stuff like this up. But obviously the Johnny Somalis and as far back as the Logan Pauls who went to Japan and pretty much used and tested the Japanese level of politeness, maturity, overall culture of being non-reactive to very offensive things. They just tested that as much as they possibly could to see how much they could push and aggravate the Japanese. It's disgusting. It's disgusting to see. And people say like, oh, they go over there and do this, they look like assholes, they'll get shipped back to their own country eventually or kicked out or banned from the country. But it goes much deeper than that. The worst part about things like this is if someone's there shouting stuff in English, almost 100% of the time, they believe it is always an American doing this. And a lot of Americans, no matter where you're from in America or how much Japanese you can speak, will get hate from other people doing this kind of stuff. You will be looked at side-eyed, given the stink eye every time you enter a store, go into a train, or just want to maybe even film a video for people back home. Perhaps you're even just sitting nicely in a park by yourself, nobody's there, and you want to make a hello from Japan message to mom and dad back home because you're there on studying maybe Japanese martial arts or the language itself. And people will still give you kind of like the, what is this person doing there? I don't trust this. I'm going to stay far, far away. And that's really a nasty downside to it. You may even be using your phone when you go into a store and perhaps you're just taking a quick picture of yourself or something like that. And people might be like, oh yeah, don't do that here. Don't come in here and do that. Don't bring your camera out whatsoever. We don't want anything filmed in there. And it's like, you're not even there to do that. Maybe you're just sending a message to a friend and they're just worried that you're going to, go on all these sort of hijinks of messing up the store or screwing with the staff or doing something completely malicious simply because these jerks in the past were the ones who made it intolerable for you to simply pull out your camera. This is really something I hate because I've even had videos where I'm walking down the street in areas that are not like shoulder to shoulder traffic, like in some shopping districts in Japan, like maybe just like back alleys in my neighborhood, and someone will pass by and give me a look like, ugh, gaijin filming. And it's like, I'm just holding the camera on myself. I'm not getting anybody else in the background. But I understand their distrust due to jerks like this completely messing with the society of Japan. Moving on to a lighter part. These get a little bit lighter. That I just wanted to get the darkest one out of the way first. The praiser or the apologist. There's people who come to Japan and they only stay for a very short time, or perhaps they only come for a tourist visa, which can be up to 90 days, but I tend to see people only stay for like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and they'll just praise and make excuses for everything in Japan. And don't get me wrong, there is incredible things about Japan. Healthcare is almost totally free in Japan. Customer service is top notch. People are very polite. The streets are very clean. Everything is very sanitized and hygienic. But there's downsides to everything. For example, people having to work 12 hours and having the word karoshi in your language, which means death from overwork. There's a lot of negative sides to Japan that, unless you've stayed there for a while, you don't know about these, or unless you've done some background research on just social topics and social problems, you may not know about. And there's the people who come to Japan and say everything you've heard about Japan negatively is totally wrong. Japan is 100% a pure country that is amazing. Everything here is incredible. The people are always so happy and polite. They are very polite, and there's great customer service at a lot of the places you will go, but that doesn't mean some of these people aren't completely miserable having to work 8-hour shifts while being only paid part-time for 4 hours, not getting the proper national benefits because the company they're working for cheats the system, or even things like a company like Uniqlo, which everyone loves to shop there and get clothes, but they're also known as what's called a buraku company, which means they have a lot of power harassment going on. I've heard insane training stories where they would make people stay at the store for hours upon hours, folding late, late, late into the early morning hours when they're long off the clock and not getting paid. And apparently, a lot of the treatment that they have for their employees is very, very abusive. And these things I feel like should be balanced with the positives that you see. Go ahead and talk about some of the incredible things Japanese people have done. For example, you're lost and a nice Obachan comes up to you and says, "Here, let me show you the way," and walks you all the way to your destination, and you're oh so thankful for that. That is wonderful. But also talk about the fact that there's a lot of only elderly care things going on in Japan, where the elderly get the best and the greatest stuff first, and the younger people of Japan are completely pushed to the wayside to the point that no one wants to get married, no one wants to have kids, no one wants to work a 12-hour job, no one wants to continue on Japanese society because it doesn't do anything for them. There's a lot of youth in Japan who are just kind of fed up because they've had things like, oh, their little brother or sister who wants to play at the playground in their neighborhood. That playground gets ripped out because old people in that neighborhood go to bed at 5 p.m. and don't want loud kids screaming on the park at 5 p.m. when it's still nice and bright out and kids have gotten out of school and want to enjoy a day at the park. Almost all the legislation goes towards the old people, almost all the benefits go towards the old people. There's a lot of things you've got to balance. So don't always be that person that's like, everything you see is perfect. Nothing that you've ever heard about Japan negative is true. The population's not going down. I've seen babies everywhere. And it's like, yeah, have you tried going out to like the countryside of Japan and seeing how many people are pushing baby carts around there? You'll find a lot of abandoned towns out in countryside Japan because everybody needs to move to the city to get a job that pays well enough just to be able to afford real estate in Japan. Make sure you check all sides of everything. Don't be the nonstop praiser and apologist. On the other side, we've got the gloomy Gus or the negative Nancy. Um, I know who a lot of you are thinking of. There was the famous, and he's kind of proud of this, so I'm sure he doesn't mind that I mention him. And I think he was very brave with some of the issues he brought forward. Ryan Boundless, who had a series on Japan called The Dream Crusher about you shouldn't try to come here and be an English teacher. You're going to be poor and homeless, and you can't even afford a sandwich at 7-Eleven. It wasn't that extreme. I'm being hyperbolic, but there is a point where you're just kind of like, why are you there? Why are you in Japan if it's this miserable? These days, I will say life in Japan, like living in Japan, making a life for yourself or trying to start a family there, would be pretty rough, I think, for most gaijin, especially when it comes to the pay of an English teacher these days. The pay increase has not gone up since 2007, and you've now got 2024 inflation, as well as insane taxes now in Japan. So trying to survive off of about $2,000 to maybe, if you're working like the best English teacher job ever, $3,000 a month would be insane. And I'm talking about city living, okay? I know people are going to be like, but rent is so cheap in the countryside. Well, that's great. Good luck finding an English teaching job in the countryside. unless you want to commute 2 hours every day, which if you want to do that, you might as well just work some insane hours. You've got to make sure you're a balance between the negative Nancy and the nonstop apologist. You've got to make sure you give both sides to everything. Now, I have other friends who still live in Japan but have gone outside of teaching and now make their living in IT, cybersecurity, working for an American company that has a Japanese subsidiary or sister company out there. And they live quite a good life. Getting a USD salary while you're living in Japan is an amazing life. You can afford quite a bit, even if your American pay is lower than average. The American dollar is so strong now in Japan that you'd be getting paid almost double what your salary would be if it was in Japanese yen. So you've got to balance everything out. You've got to show the best of both sides. And you've also got to make sure you balance it with the negative and the positive. Don't go overboard with one or the other. Try to make sure you always give a fair take. And, don't be afraid to get pushback when you do mention some of the more negative things. You will get extreme nationalists who may come into your comment section and be like, no, that's not true. I've had this happen before when I cover the hikikomori situation, where there's a million plus hikikomori within Japan who are part of a white page document study by the government itself, which means the government did it, and that is more of a consensus that they've taken, not a third party research on its own country, as well as Tokyo University itself. And the mounting nonstop accumulation of hikikomori, which, if you don't know, is shut ins within Japan who they don't just not contribute to society, they really hurt society in the sense that they have locked themselves into their rooms and don't come out anymore, and now have elderly parents who must take care of them. You may get pushback on talking about this. People are very upset that this exists within Japan, and it's a hard thing for them to face. Nonetheless, I feel like it's a social issue that needs to be talked about more, because I'm starting to see it spread to other countries and become more of an international problem, where we're starting to see more and more, especially young men, shut themselves in and decide they're not going to partake in society. And if it goes the same way as Japan, they're dealing with a problem now where there's new elderly hikikomori that are in their 60s plus and have 80 to 90-year-old parents. Yes, people live a long time in Japan, it's possible, who are trying to take care of them or having to be taken care of by them. For example, the roles have switched. The hikikomori is now having to take care of the elderly parent who is now got quite a few disabilities just to old age. If you're 90 plus, that's not a surprise. And some horrible things have gone down because of that. Neglect, outright murder, because they never learned how to live a full life of work or taking care of anything in their life. There's some big negatives going on with this, and it needs to be exposed. It needs to be talked about, because if you don't talk about the darker issues, they just get ignored. But last but not least, and probably one of the worst, is the clueless. The clueless visitor. The clueless visitor who wants to use social media to just kind of make up stuff as they go in Japan. They just see Japan, again, as a form of entertainment and not a culture. Some of the worst ones I've seen were on TikTok. I saw one guy talking about how dirty and disgusting hospitals were in Japan, and I was like, what does he mean? Like, every hospital, every clinic, anywhere I've ever been, as far as medical is concerned, is incredibly clean. And he's walking up to the building, and the building has a green cross on it. And this man thinks that it is a hospital. And he gets closer and closer, and eventually, it's not open or anything like that. It's shut down. And he puts a camera up to the window so you can see inside. And inside, there is construction equipment. So what I want you to do is Google Green Cross in Japan and see what it stands for. It's construction work. It doesn't have anything to do with medical stuff. And this man seriously thinks like a place where dirty construction materials, such as like backhoes and dump trucks and things like that, are stored, is a hospital. I'm unsure how you could be this dumb. And there's no other way to go about it. If you saw this stuff in there, I don't know why you would assume this is definitely a hospital just because it has a green cross. I understand a cross usually stands for medical in America, or many other countries for that matter, Europe and Canada, all over the world. But it's quite apparent that this is not being used for any kind of medical surgeries, clinics, checkups, whatever. And he continues to go on and on about how disgusting it is that they would just leave these dirty helmets and dirty construction equipment in this hospital. And you're just like, this is a sign for construction. I don't know why you didn't research this. The other one I've seen is this idiot who has a whole series where he travels the world and supposedly meets gang members who are in each country. Because he's a straight gangster, yo. And he did go to Japan. He was really in Japan. He's not faking going to Japan. But he just got some Asian people who, I don't even know if they're Japanese, to like wear like killer clown masks and like hockey masks and put on suits and say that he's meeting the Yakuza, and just poses with them around like expensive cars and stuff like that. Like, yo, this is the Yakuza. I'm hanging with them. No, you're not. The Yakuza don't go wearing masks and like hang out with random gaijin. The last thing they want to do is hang out with gaijin. They want no part of it. You know, maybe the closest gaijin they would ever hang out with is, you know, a Chinese triad to do some sort of overseas international smuggling. But they're not just going to hang out with some random YouTuber influencer who has no connection to any gangster ties. Not only that, almost all of the Yakuza at this point are incredible, absolutely the most elderly people you can imagine. It's a crumbling organization. The biggest one was in my area as far as clans are concerned. The Yamaguchi, the Yamaguchi Gumi. Sorry, I always mix those two up. Gumi, Gucci. Gumi is group. Gucci, Yamaguchi is the actual name. And they, about, what was it, like 2017 or so, they splintered into so many subgroups that those subgroups slowly like dithered into almost nothingness. And one of their biggest problems was they never learned how to use technology. Like, they were very, very elderly and never caught up with computers, smartphones, or anything like that. And that's where a lot of crime happens now in Japan. There's groups that use smartphones and computers to do all kinds of scams, you know, like phone scams, calling people about, you know, hey mom, I'm in jail, send some money so I can get out. And then they send a bunch of money over to someone who's not their actual son, just someone pretending to be their son. It's mostly social engineering and hacking type crimes that go into Japan right now. And the Yakuza has no clue how to do any of that stuff. They're just not very technologically savvy. And for the most part are incredibly elderly. And this guy just, I guess, grabbed a couple random Japanese people who said it would be cool. Maybe maybe they don't understand what he's even talking about. They don't even have tattoos. They're just like wearing masks and putting on suits. He's like, yo, now I'm here with the Yakuza. And you're just like, what? First of all, the Yakuza don't want to be in YouTube videos. And second of all, they don't wear funny Halloween masks. And third, they're mostly elderly. And fourth, they still have their tattoos. I don't know why he thought showing people with no tattoos would be seen as Yakuza. It's so weird. Don't do stuff like this. This is insanely clueless. I think he actually believes people consider him connected to gangsters or Yakuza or anything like that. But anyone who's lived a second in Japan knows this guy's just a big goofball. Don't make videos like this. Don't make up lies. Don't do something so clueless that you think a construction company is a hospital. Research just a little bit. Just get a little bit of research in there. It's so easy now. I understand back in 2007 there was a lot of outdated stuff, a lot of outdated websites, and people did get really mixed up with what they were talking about. I even made mistakes myself because the information was outdated. Some of my old visa information is outdated because laws have just simply changed. But I try to correct that as much as I can. And again, just try not to use Japan as a form of entertainment and see it more as a culture. Anyway, I hope those tips help you with going to Japan, seeing Japan, and presenting Japan to others. And if you have any questions about any of the things I talked about today in the video, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. Aside from that, I want to thank all my members. I want to also let you know there's another video coming out this week. I've gone right back to my schedule of an extra video for all members every week. If you want to join, it's only $1.90 for an extra video every week, and that's only $1.90 a month, and you get anywhere from, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours worth of extra material and a lot more personal stuff that I talk about that I probably wouldn't release here on my main YouTube channel. So think about that. If you want to help out the channel, come join a live stream tonight. We'll be playing my personally made TTRPG known as Void of Crown. And on Sunday, we'll just be hanging out and talking about Japan, where you can do a JFAQ, Japan's Frequently Asked Questions, and ask me anything you want there. Until next time, I've been Unrested, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.